The snowman stood proudly at the edge of the driveway, smiling at the quiet winter morning. 2 hours later, it was nothing but shattered snow and broken sticks. Everyone would soon learn why this wasn't an accident and why the footage would change everything. Mark had built the snowman with his niece the night before, laughing under falling snow as the neighborhood lights glowed softly. It wasn't blocking traffic, not touching the road, just a harmless sign of joy on his own property. But at dawn, a loud crunch echoed through the still air. A black SUV rolled forward, then stopped. The driver never stepped out. Instead, the engine revved, tires spun, and the snowman vanished beneath spinning wheels. Mark watched from his window, frozen, as the HOA president, Karen, drove off without looking back. At first, he thought it was a mistake. Then he noticed her slow down at the corner, glance in the mirror, and smile. That smile burned into his memory. Mark didn't yell. He didn't post online. He simply walked outside, picked up the broken carrot nose, and looked up at the small security camera mounted under his roof. What Karen didn't know was that this camera had recorded everything in perfect detail. And what no one expected was how desperate she would become once the truth came out. Mark replayed the footage once, then again, his hands steady despite the anger in his chest. The promise he made to himself was simple, no drama, only facts, but Karen had a very different plan once she realized she'd been seen. By noon, the HOA group chat exploded with messages. Karen claimed the snowman had been a road hazard and accused Mark of violating winter safety rules. She wrote with confidence, using official language in bold words, as if repetition could make her lie real. Neighbors hesitated. Some stayed silent. Others privately messaged Mark, asking what really happened. He answered calmly, telling them he was handling it. That afternoon, a notice appeared on his door, an HOA warning for unsafe decorative placement. Mark smiled, not because it was funny, but because it proved something important. Karen wasn't sorry. She was scared. Instead of responding, Mark saved screenshots, backed up the video, and called the local non-emergency police line to ask a simple question: how to file a property damage report. The officer on the phone listened carefully and advised him to bring the footage in person. As the sun dipped behind snowy roofs, Karen drove by again, slower this time, her eyes fixed on Mark's house. She waved stiffly. Mark waved back. What she didn't see was him holding his phone, recording her reaction. The trap wasn't revenge. It was patience. And the next move would force Karen to choose between admitting the truth or doubling down on a lie that couldn't survive daylight. The police station smelled like coffee and old paper, calm and quiet compared to the storm building outside. Mark handed over the footage without commentary. The officer's raised eyebrow said more than words ever could. Frame by frame, the video showed the SUV turn, pause, then deliberately drive through the snowman. The license plate was clear. The driver's face was visible. There was no confusion. No accident. The officer nodded slowly and explained the process. A report would be filed, and Karen would be contacted for a statement. Mark thanked him and left, feeling lighter than he had in days. Meanwhile, Karen was busy sending another HOA email, this time warning residents about false accusations and anti-community behavior. She didn't know the police already had the footage. That night, her tone changed. She called Mark directly, her voice tight and forced cheerful. She suggested moving on, offered to forget the whole thing, and hinted that HOA fines could disappear if he cooperated. Mark declined politely and ended the call. Minutes later, a patrol car drove slowly through the neighborhood. Karen watched from her window, curtains barely open, as panic replaced confidence. For the first time, she wasn't in control of the narrative. The truth didn't need defending. It only needed to be seen. And soon, everyone would see it, from neighbors to officers to the very board she believed she ruled without consequence. The HOA emergency meeting was called within 24 hours, framed as a routine discussion. But the tension in the room was undeniable. Everyone felt it. The moment when a lie runs out of space, Karen stood at the front, arms crossed, speaking quickly, avoiding eye contact. She repeated her story, adding details that hadn't existed before. Then the officer entered. The room went silent. Calmly, he explained that the police had reviewed footage related to a property damage complaint. He asked Karen if she wanted to revise her statement. she laughed nervously and shook her head. The officer then turned a laptop toward the board and pressed play. Gasps filled the room. There was no mistaking what they saw. The pause. The turn. The deliberate action. Karen's face drained of color as whispers spread. She tried to speak, but words failed her. The officer closed the laptop and explained the next steps, his tone professional and final. Karen was no longer leading the meeting. She was answering questions. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the ground with fresh white. Inside, the truth had cleared everything. Mark sat quietly, not smiling, not celebrating. This wasn't about winning. It was about accountability. And the final consequences were still unfolding. By morning, the neighborhood felt different, like a weight had been lifted. Conversations were honest again, and Karen was nowhere to be seen. An official notice arrived later that day. The HOA board announced Karen's temporary removal pending review, citing conduct unbecoming of a president. Privately, several members apologized to Mark for doubting him. He accepted with grace, reminding them that systems only work when people speak up. Karen attempted one last move, posting a vague message online about being targeted, but it gained no traction. The police report was already filed. The footage had been shared with the board. There was nothing left to spin. Mark rebuilt the Snowman that evening. This time alone, placing it farther back but still visible. Neighbors stopped by, bringing scarves, buttons, even a small hat. Laughter returned to the street. What began as a small act of destruction had revealed something bigger: how easily power can be abused, and how quickly it collapses when faced with evidence. Karen's authority had depended on silence. Once that silence broke, everything changed. And while the snowman would melt in time, the lesson would not. Weeks passed, and the case quietly closed with a resolution Karen never expected. She wasn't fined heavily, but she lost what mattered most to her. The board voted unanimously to remove her permanently. Her role, her influence, her reputation gone. The police matter was resolved through restitution, a formal apology, and a permanent record. Mark never asked for more. He didn't need revenge. Justice had done its job. The neighborhood elected a new HOA president, someone calm and transparent. Meetings became shorter. Rules became clearer. Trust slowly rebuilt. Mark's camera remained in place, not as a threat, but as a reminder. Sometimes protection isn't about walls, it's about light. Karen moved soon after, her house listed quietly, her departure unnoticed. The snow melted. Spring arrived. And life returned to normal, stronger for what it had survived. The final twist wasn't the footage, the police, or even Karen's fall. It was how something so small reminded everyone of something so important. A snowman, built with love, exposed a pattern of control and lies. One calm response revealed the truth. Mark didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply trusted facts over fear. In the end, the community learned that rules mean nothing without fairness, and authority means nothing without accountability. The snowman never came back, but something better did. Respect. And that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.